think about my life, and then I think about you, and then it makes me feel so much better. And I'm like, okay, fine, thanks, put me down.
So Lucy, thank you so much for joining me to chat about your brand new book, Blind Not Broken. It's very exciting. So to start with, tell me why you wanted to write this book.
For all of the little Lucys out there that don't have a voice, that haven't had a voice in the nearly 11 years that I've been completely blind for, I didn't really feel when I first lost my vision like I had a role model that could kind of just tell me everything was going to be okay, and that sight loss wasn't the end of me. I did feel like it was the end of me for a time, and I just wanted to make sure that like people had a voice, really.
So how did you kind of cope with the isolation that you say that you felt as you lost your sight and when you completely lost it at 17?
I felt sick with dread when I became blind. I think since I've written it down in the book, I feel differently about kind of how I see that moment in time. It's definitely, you know, always going to be with me forever. And I do carry that part of my life. When the doctor told me that, you know, I wasn't going to really ever have vision again, I had to learn how to live again completely overnight. There was no one that could tell me that I was necessarily going to be okay. It was all an unknown. I remember actually really vividly, you know, not being able to make a cup of tea and thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to burn myself? I'm 17. I learned how to make a cup of tea years ago. But I always say, you know, sitting here right now, I'm 11 years old in relative terms with all the new experiences that I've had because I'm almost 11 years blind. So it is really the way I view my life now that I'm living in this body, that I'm learning to love myself again, and I have.
Yeah. And in terms of the members of your family who were helping you through that grief, also grieving themselves probably for the change in their lives and how much, you know, they wanted to be able to help you, how important was open communication in that time, in those early years?
Massive. I think for my mom and dad and my sister, it shattered their world. They speak a lot in the book, as well as my now husband, Ollie, about how they felt. And I really loved their perspective, because often grief doesn't just swallow the person who's dealing with the kind of heartbreaking scenario. It ricochets all around your family life. And, you know, from me just not being able to feel like I wanted to get out of bed and having a tub of ice cream, I think all of them desperately, with all of their might, would have rather have been me. And I know they've all said that in different circumstances. It was hard to get it right. It was hard to navigate. You know, none of us had ever dealt with or knew anyone with a disability. So, you know, my dad would be writing lovely letters to get me funding for my first Braille note, which is basically a computer that I can type Braille on, which is the tactile language that I use. Just little things like that, like my mom and Ollie, when I was doing my A-level studies, because I didn't know Braille yet, I would dictate it all to my teaching assistant and to them. So they helped me with probably more things than like the average family would, I guess. I don't know how to kind of quantify that time of our life, but it was just, I think there's parts of it as well that have just blocked out because it was quite really traumatic as well.
Yeah. One thing that kept you going was when you got your first guide dog, Olga. So I wondered if you could tell me about Olga and the difference she made to your life.
Oh, gosh, that girl. I think everyone always remembers their first guide dog or their first mobility aid. Like, it's a shining light in a sea full of worry. You know, I remember grabbing the harness and thinking, this 2-year-old thing is going to guide me, what? And it was a bit of a disconnect. I was like, how can a dog help me cross the road? Like, it was so weird. I have all of those questions, you know, that I ask online, like in my own head, and I had to figure it out on the job, you know? So I think though being with Olga has made me a better version of me. That dog got me through so many highs and lows. She went to the first day of sixth form with me. She went to my first ever role in the BBC, like my first ever workplace. You know, she's went on countless trains reporting for Radio 4 and the BBC up and down the country, and she's just so resilient, that little thing. And you know in the beginning it was just me and Olga getting a loaf of bread, but then it turned into me and Olga going to Glasgow on our own, or me and Olga going on a plane on our own. And I think because she went through the full spectrum of rehabilitating with me, like no other dog will do that and be that for me. There's so many feelings when you first lose your eyesight of, oh, am I a burden now to everyone around me? But I wasn't a burden to Olga, and I never was a burden to her. She needed me to feed her. She needed me to do things for her, and then she would do things for me. And it was the ultimate team. And by all means, like the rest of the people in my life didn't make me feel like a burden, but I think Olga was the ultimate just bundle of love.
How does Olga live out her days in retirement?
Oh, just snoring a lot. Going on hour-long walks, like several hours in the park. We have a park near us called Sutton Park, and she just loves rolling in the leaves. And she lives with us, but like times when I'm in London with Miss Moles here at my feet, and lovely Ollie and Katrina behind me, she's definitely at home snuggling.
Nice. And you write about rebellious hope. Will you tell me what that is and when you've experienced it?
Oh, I love that you quote that. When I first heard it was Deborah James. I actually worked with her mom on a Tesco shoot, and I remember thinking, if I can have just a piece of what Deborah calls rebellious hope. She's a massive, and still is a massive, inspiration to me. And I know sometimes we say, oh, inspiration's such an annoying word. You know, the late Stella Young said that coined the term inspiration porn, and it kind of is seen as kind of a negative connotation when talking about disability and long-term health conditions. But I think for me, rebellious hope and inspiration kind of go all in one, that you have to kind of have hope against everything, have hope in the bad days, hope when you're feeling like you've hit a wall and you can't get back up again. Rebellious hope is the hope that you probably, you know, even when you don't feel like there's hope anymore, you feel like you're rebelling against yourself even, and the confines of like your mind in some ways. And I don't know, I think, yeah, when I heard it, it was very applicable to my situation.
And you say that we also live multiple truths. I wondered what the multiple truths that you're living are.
So my multiple truths, which I talk about in the book, are I can love blindness, but I can also hate blindness. It was something that I kind of delved into when I first had like a psychology session about my blindness. And I think I was thinking of things very black and white. And I always, I love ACT therapy, which is acceptance and commitment therapy, where I'm seeing all of the negative thoughts on my bus, and you know, some of them have costumes of like witches and gremlins, and those gremlins can go to the back of my bus. And maybe sometimes like I'm really hating blindness, but it doesn't, even though the gremlin's at the back of my bus, I'm still carrying him with me. Like that thought about, you know, oh, I just want to be sighted today, or, you know, I hate myself because I can't see, you know, whether the baked beans are timed for this amount in the microwave. Like I can have those moments and those thoughts, but I can also think, right, I'm just going to put my little fairy to the front of my bus and think, oh, actually, I love being blind because it's made me have the voice to change and make a difference. And I can also think, oh, yeah, having eyesight, not having my eyesight anymore makes me have the vision to change this world. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And I thought it was interesting what you said earlier about kind of inspiration, and there is a lot of thought around, say, someone's lost a leg and therefore, you know, for getting up every day, some people would say they're an inspiration, and that not being something that most people with a disability want to hear. They're just getting on and they're just living their lives. But you said, obviously, that other people have been inspirational for you. So how would you say those two things balance against each other? When is it okay for someone to be an inspiration, and when is it, not the time and the place?
Yeah, love that question. I think there definitely is a distinction between them. I think if you are looking up to a hero or a heroine and saying, wow, their achievements are next level, someone's won the Paralympic Games or got a gold medal or, achieved a long-standing goal of theirs, or is an inspiration to you because they've done something that you would love to do or achieve. Maybe they have written an article and you love what they've written, or they are someone that follows your moral compass and also has your value system. You can be inspired by a thought leader. But I think the distinction comes when we as disabled people are just getting out of bed and someone looks at us and goes, oh, I feel sorry for them, and you're an inspiration because you did just get up. We don't want to be seen as like having a pity party for ourselves and like that card that kind of makes someone go, oh, I think about my life and then I think about you and then it makes me feel so much better. And I'm like, okay, fine, thanks, put me down. To kind of make yourself feel better, I think that's when it's wrong.
Yeah. And you're right that we need more relationships with disabled characters in the media, and particularly some sexy disabled characters. Why do you think that is so important?
Oh, just so, like, it's 2024. I think ultimately, if we're going to have these like really not very great portrayals of blind people dating or disabled people dating in the media, which I do mention in my book, it's only going to perpetuate the stereotype. And I think blind people dating other blind people or disabled people dating other disabled people it's not always the case, and it's definitely not in my world. Like, I always say that I'm within an interabled relationship, and I love it because there's parts of me that don't feel blind, and I can still say, it just sounds really weird, but like sometimes I don't feel like a blind woman and other days I do, even though I am. So I just think we all need to see people as having like different parts of themselves. Like I'm a blind person, but I'm also a dog mom, and I'm also a wife, and I'm also a red-haired lady, and I have all these different attributes about me. And I think widening that discussion with the topic of sex is amazing. But also I think I was listening to this podcast on audio porn by Amazon, and I thought, oh, that's really good as well, because it was narrated by a visually impaired presenter, and I thought, oh, I feel like we're getting somewhere.
I exec produced that podcast.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
I'm so glad you listened to it. I was going to ask. I was going to be like, have you listened to Press Play Turn On?
Yeah, literally. I love it. I loved it, yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Actually, one of my BBC producers sent it to me. She was like, Lou, you need to do something like this. I was like, this is so cool. Yeah.
I'm so glad you liked it. And when you and Ollie got married, when you walked down the aisle, Ollie and everyone else wore blindfolds.
Yes.
Why did you make that decision, and what did that mean to you?
I was terrified that I would live that moment and everyone would say, you looked beautiful, and that's not how I see beauty anymore. So I wanted, selfishly or not, I don't feel, and Ollie still thinks that because it was our moment, we made it our moment. He feels, rightly or wrongly, we're hoping to not cause offence with this statement, that, he lives in my blind world so often that we wanted to do that for each other, and we felt like it was a very personal way for me to walk down the aisle. I also think, because I've never seen my wedding dress, I wanted Ollie to view it in exactly the same way as I did and not have any preconceived notions. And that's the beauty of what having no eyesight does. You're within yourself, you're in your own thoughts and feelings, and you can it's such a quiet moment, but it's such a poignant moment to understand who you truly are. And I think me walking down the aisle also to Arrival of the Birds by the Cinematic Orchestra, it was in A Theory of Everything, which is one of my favourite films, which is about Stephen Hawking's life. And I couldn't help but cry, because I was like, that montage of Stephen kind of, you know, acquiring his disability, I felt was so me, but also it's the freedom of knowing that your disability doesn't have to define you. And my dad then kind of walked me down the aisle, and he was the only one that could see in that sense. And I thought that was also so beautiful. And then Ollie felt my dress, and I just thought, wow, you don't have to have vision to love kind of doing things. And I don't know, I think a lot of the time we see that traditional bride, don't we, walking down the aisle, and I just didn't want that to be me. Yeah.
Because you're right that the moment is beautiful without the seeing of anyone. Yeah, completely.
Yeah, definitely.
This is probably really lame to say, but I did cry at that video on Instagram.
Oh, bless you. No, it's not at all. See, this is the thing. Like, I think that's what it evoked in people. I really do. Like, it's a non-traditional way of saying, well, I still want to do things, but I want to do it in my own way.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's all right. Nothing's going to explode by, you know, having a blindfold on, or nothing's going to happen if we want to do things differently. And I think I got a lot of comments and a lot of direct messages like, oh my gosh, Lucy, I feel like I can just have no one to my wedding. And then someone else was like, oh, I just feel like I can have my wedding at my house. And I just feel like, do you know what I mean? And it was kind of, because it's such a traditional thing that a lot of people kind of have a lot of say on, like families often like to kind of weigh in about weddings. It kind of set so many people free, and it definitely set me and Ollie free when we made that decision, because we didn't tell anyone that it was going to happen either.
I love that. Yeah, it's just celebrating your love and your togetherness, how it feels right to whoever that partnership is. Yeah,
definitely.
I loved it. What was it like for you narrating your audiobook?
Incredible. I didn't know whether I would do it justice in a way, because I'd never read out loud in sync with someone before. So what happened was they hired this lovely actress who was also a Brummie, and she read it out at the speed that I love to read at, and I had it in my earpiece and then my headphones on top of that, and then I literally just read it, and read it exactly the same speed as her. So I think you have to move your brain into a different gear. And I think definitely there's some parts of like my sighted frontal cortex or whatever that has rewired itself and made do with like different parts of my brain. I think definitely when I'm reading Braille, I know that I feel like I'm using the same parts of my brain that I would have used to see. Yeah. It's very odd, but the body is a wonderful thing, and I just love the fact that I could do it.
Did you find it emotional like your family did doing their bits?
I had to stop. Yeah, I had to stop, especially on the bits where we were talking about me losing my eyesight and being in the hospital. Yeah, I had to pause. And to be honest, me and my producer and the SM, the studio manager, just everyone hearing it, we all kind of teared up on that bit, and we all had to stop. So we had a 5-minute break, and I had a biscuit. So always makes everything better.
Yeah. You've written this book. You did allude that you have other projects, which maybe you can't talk about. But is there anything that you kind of got in the pipeline that follows this book?
I do. I'm not too sure whether I can talk about
we're seeing shakes of head in the background. How disappointing.
No, but it's amazing. I'm really excited. Yeah, it's very exciting.
And in the meantime, everyone can obviously go and listen to your audiobook.
Yes,
so.
I'm so
Thank you so much, Lucy. This has been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Holly.